My daughter concealed my wife's affair until I enacted the ultimate retribution and reclaimed my life. I never imagined that the day would come when the veneer of my seemingly perfect life would shatter so completely. Yet there I was, standing on the precipice of a truth so brutal it took years to digest. I was once proud of the life I built. A successful career, a warm home, and a loving family that, at least on the surface, radiated harmony. My wife and I had been inseparable for over a decade, and our daughter, my precious little girl, was the embodiment of our hopes for a brighter future. But beneath that glossy facade, secrets festered like an insidious cancer, hidden carefully by those who thought they could protect us from the inevitable pain of betrayal. It began with subtle hints, a misplaced smile when she thought I wasn't, watching, the inexplicable late nights, hushed phone conversations that stopped the moment I entered the room. I questioned myself repeatedly. Was it just the weariness of a long, stressful day, or had I become the unwitting target of some elaborate deception? I tried to brush off the doubts, convincing myself that trust was the cornerstone of any relationship. But deep down, the gnawing sensation of something amiss would not be silenced. And then there was my daughter. As a child, her innocent eyes had always been so perceptive, as if she could see through the layers of our adult pretenses. I later learned that she had been quietly witnessing the subtle exchanges between her mother and a mysterious stranger, her small heart burdened with a secret far heavier than any child should carry. For years, my daughter guarded this secret, with an unwavering determination. I was oblivious, lulled into complacency by the belief that my family was unbreakable. I remember one evening when, as I sank into my favorite armchair after a long day at work, I caught a glimpse of my daughter's pained expression as she looked at me. I asked her what was wrong, and in that fleeting moment, her eyes spoke volumes. Yet she remained silent, offering only a weak smile and a quick change of subject. I chalked it up to the pressures of school and childhood angst, never suspecting that the truth was hidden right before my eyes. The years passed slowly, each day a monotonous repetition of life's rituals, until one evening an unexpected letter arrived in the mail. It was not addressed in the familiar, loving script of my wife, but bore a handwriting I almost recognized from years past, a handwriting that my daughter had often scribbled in the margins of her school assignments. The note was cryptic, written in a tone both sorrowful and resolute, and hinted at a betrayal so profound it threatened to consume everything I held dear. At first, I thought it must be a cruel prank, or perhaps the ramblings of someone who had mistaken me for another. But as I sat there, the weight of its implications slowly took hold, and I began to connect the dots of a puzzle I had never known existed. I embarked on a journey of quiet investigation, piecing together fragments of conversations, odd behaviors, and furtive glances that my daughter had once tried to hide. Every time I approached her, she would avert her eyes, her silence speaking louder than any accusation could. The deeper I dug, the more I realized that the secret had been carefully kept from me, not out of malice or spite, but by someone I loved more than anyone else. My daughter had concealed my wife's affair with a precision that suggested she knew exactly when the time was right for me to learn the truth. The revelation, when it finally came, was not an explosion of anger or despair, but rather a calculated unveiling of reality, a moment designed to force me to confront my own stagnation and reclaim my life from the shackles of betrayal. That fateful night. As the truth emerged in a cascade of evidence, I felt a surge of clarity and an unfamiliar sense of empowerment. It was as though the years of quiet suffering had prepared me for this moment, a moment where I was no longer the passive husband, the silent sufferer, but the architect of my own destiny. I realized that I had been living in a dream, a comforting illusion that shielded me from the harsh truths of life. Now, with the final pieces of the puzzle in place, I was forced to acknowledge that my wife had been living a double life, one that was intricately entwined with my daughter's painful secret. The night I enacted my retribution was unlike any other. I had spent weeks meticulously planning every detail, ensuring that the moment of reckoning would be both public and irrevocable. I knew that true retribution was not about petty revenge, but about reclaiming one's dignity and reshaping one's future. I began by confronting the woman who had once been my partner, the person I had trusted implicitly. In a calm, almost clinical tone, I laid out the evidence I had gathered: old photographs, texts, receipts, and witness testimonies that painted a picture too damning to ignore. I could see the shock in her eyes, a mix of regret and fear as the reality of her deception hit her like a tidal wave. Yet, even as I spoke, I was aware of the silent witness in the room: my daughter. Her eyes were fixed on me, a complex mixture of guilt, sorrow, and something I could barely decipher. A flicker of relief, perhaps, or the dawning realization that this confrontation was long overdue. There was no dramatic outburst, no physical violence. My retribution was not the stuff of impulsive rage, but a carefully orchestrated performance of truth. I made sure that every word, every pause, and every measured breath conveyed the depth of my betrayal and the strength of my resolve. As the final accusatory statement left my lips, the room fell into an unbearable silence. I watched as the woman, who had shattered my world, crumbled under the weight of her own duplicity, her defenses collapsing in the face of undeniable evidence. And in that silent, charged moment, I felt something shift inside me. I was no longer the broken man who had once tiptoed around fragile truths. I was a man reborn, ready to embrace a future free from the shadows of deceit. In the aftermath, the days that followed were a blur of quiet reflection and unexpected liberation. I retreated from the chaos of my former life, seeking solace in the simple pleasures that had been neglected for far too long: a long walk in the park, a good book, long conversations with old friends who had been waiting patiently for me to find my way back to myself. It was during one of these solitary walks that my daughter finally approached me, her eyes brimming with unshed tears and a trembling voice that barely held together. She apologized for her part in the deception, for the years she had silently borne the burden of our fractured truth. I listened, my heart softening as I realized that, in her own way, she had been trying to protect me from a pain so deep it would have otherwise destroyed me. In that raw, vulnerable moment, I forgave her, not for her sake, but for mine. It was time to heal, to let go of the past, and to embrace the possibility of redemption for both of us. The process of reclaiming my life was neither swift nor painless. I had to rebuild my identity from the shattered remnants of a marriage that had once defined me. The journey was fraught with moments of self-doubt, flashbacks to happier times that now felt tainted by betrayal, and an ever-present fear of trusting again. Yet, with each passing day, I discovered new strength in the realization that my worth was not determined by the actions of another, but by the resilience of my own spirit. I sought therapy, joined support groups, and even took up writing, as a means of processing the tumultuous emotions that had become my constant companions. Slowly but surely, I began to weave a new narrative. A narrative in which I was not a victim of circumstances, but the hero of my own story. As I look back now, years after that fateful night of reckoning, I can see how every painful moment, every silent tear, and every sleepless night led me to this place of unexpected clarity and strength. The retribution I enacted was not an act of cruelty, but a necessary step in reclaiming my autonomy. It forced me to confront the reality of my life, to acknowledge the betrayal, and to choose a path forward that was rooted in truth and self-respect. My daughter and I have forged a new bond, one built on the shared understanding of how deeply secrets can cut and how vital it is to face the truth head-on, no matter how devastating it may be. We continue to navigate the complexities of our relationship, learning each day that forgiveness is not about excusing the past, but about freeing oneself from its relentless grip. I now stand in a place of quiet confidence, having rebuilt a life that is richer, more authentic, and more resilient than I ever imagined possible. The scars of betrayal remain, a permanent reminder of a time when I was forced to confront the darkest corners of human frailty. Yet they also serve as a testament to the transformative power of truth and the unyielding strength of the human spirit. I share my story not as a cautionary tale, but as an invitation to those who find themselves trapped in the silence of their own secrets. The road to reclaiming one's life is often paved with unimaginable pain, but it is also illuminated by moments of profound clarity and renewal. In the end, the ultimate retribution was not the destruction of the life I once knew, but the creation of a new, unshackled existence where I am free to be exactly who I am, flawed, resilient, and fiercely alive. Now, whenever I catch a glimpse of my reflection or hear the laughter of my daughter echoing through our home, I am reminded of the long, arduous journey that brought me here. I learned that the most painful betrayals often hold within them the seeds of our greatest transformation, and that sometimes the ultimate retribution is not found in punishing those who wronged us, but in the courageous act of reclaiming our own power and writing a new story from the ruins of the old.